First off, suicide is preventable. There are nearly 40,000 individuals that die each year from suicides. And that's one of the things that we need to focus on as a society. But what's even more importantly and closer to my heart right now is the suicide of our soldiers and what's going on with them. So one of the things I'm asking everyone to think about is that when you are with an individual or you have individuals in your units and you see changes in behaviors, you see where they're actually saying, goodbye, they're actually calling their family members, they're talking about their insurance and trying to look at what they have in terms of coverage. You need to be thinking about what they're going through and try to figure out why they're asking these questions that may be somewhat unusual. If they've gone through traumatic life events where they've had loss or they've had a job or that they've lost or they've got other things that's going on in their life that could be causing them to go through a lot of stress. And even now, as we look at the different things with our budget that may be adding the stress to an individual's life, we need to be thinking about what that's doing to an individual at a personal level. And if that's causing them to change their behaviors, then we need to ask the question whether or not they need to seek help. And when I think about if an individual needs to seek help, it's more than just asking them, it's maybe digging a little deeper, it's maybe doing a little more prompting in terms of the questions, but then it may also be asking them to go and see the chaplain. Maybe they need to seek outside resources. I think one of the things that we need to focus on is the stigmas in and around someone being able to come forth saying that they need help. We need to get rid of that. There is absolutely nothing wrong when someone needs to come forward and say that they need help because they're having suicidal thoughts. I would much rather have that individual come forward and we can help them through this and we can help them through the troubled times than to have them be a casualty to something that's now becoming a systemic within our environment. So if you think about what your individual soldiers are going through and even your family members, just remember that suicide is preventable. There are ways that they can actually get support. They can actually call the hotline. They can actually reach out to the chaplain. Call or escort them to an emergency room or even a counseling service. And if it is an emergency, you need to call 911. And so if I think about the most important thing is you, the individual, getting the help that you need so that we can make sure that we all stick together at a time where something is starting to be a systemic problem that we need to deal with as a nation. And so with that, make sure that you understand suicide is preventable. It's something that we can combat together, and we are going to win at this. Thank you.
An Army captain who fell in 2012.
We met on a Christian dating website when I was in college and he was at West Point. But the first time I ever met him, I knew I was going to marry him, and he said later the same thing. He was very funny, very sarcastic, and really, really smart, like too smart. And I don't know that I've ever met anyone who was so kind, who was so compassionate. He deployed to Iraq in 2011 and was gone for about 10 and a half months. He was an Apache pilot, so he flew, I think it was over 70 missions in the 10 months he was there.
A few months after Captain Ian Morrison returned, he began having trouble sleeping. His symptoms spiraled quickly. He stopped working out, one of his favorite things to do. He was anxious. His appetite faded.
I think definitely had a hard time coming back. That's what he had said, that he understood things when he was deployed. Things made sense, there was order, and he came back and went to Walmart and didn't understand why everybody could do anything they wanted, and it seemed so disorganized. He even said, which was really hard to hear, that I miss being there. And he said, I don't miss, I want to be with you, but this society doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me anymore.
Ian took his life in March of 2012. On the same day, he was diagnosed with depression.
I was about a week or two away from graduating with a master's in counseling, so I thought I was really aware, and I did what I thought was everything I could do to get him care. You know, I allowed myself maybe 6 months to pretty much go crazy and grieve and knock it off the couch, and then I sort of made myself do something every day that gave me air. And so I ride my horse a lot. I have dogs, and I play music and paint, and my faith in God has been the number one that's pulled me through.
Every year I blame myself less for his death.
Kim Ruoko's husband took his life 9 years ago. She connected with Rebecca through TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors.
Her story is so similar in that her husband was an Apache pilot, also a very religious man, great relationship, and she's also in the mental health field, as I was.
When he knew that he was sick, and he knew that he had depression, and he knew that he had post-traumatic stress, that's when he should have put his pride aside and gotten help. And I'm angry at him sometimes for being too proud to get the help.
They died by suicide, but they lived great lives.
Both Kim and Rebecca work for TAPS now, helping other military suicide survivors.
It's very different today, which makes me really hopeful, that we have looked at these lives that have been lost and made some changes because of them.
Kim says there are many more resources available now, like a national crisis hotline and bridge organizations, which help service members who are transitioning out of the military.
So many of these guys have been to war and they've been to combat, so a lot of their identity is really closely tied with the military and their combat and their peers and a sense of belongingness that comes with that. And so as they transition in the community and try to have civilian jobs, I'm worried about that factor.
She says she also is thinking a lot this year about reservists and the Army and Air National Guards who don't always have the support of a military community. Still, she says the advances of the past decade are encouraging.
I think leaders are much better trained in identifying people at risk and knowing, how to help them and how to connect them to services. And peers are much better trained to notice it in each other.
Saving someone's life can't be one person's job, so you need to pull in your resources from the community, from your family, from the unit, because it's an awful lot for one person to try to do.